All right, tonight our friends from the Seneca Park Zoo are here. We have Tim. Tim's the big one. And Tim, who do we have with us?
This handsome guy is Mole.
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 All right. And tell us a little bit about Mole.
Mole is a spotted turtle. Spotted turtles are a small species of turtle that can be found throughout a lot of North America, mostly along the eastern seaboard, anywhere from Florida all the way up to parts of Maine, and oftentimes as far west as the Mississippi River.
All right, and actually they're found throughout much of New York State, right?
That is
not
correct.
all in New York State, but
Yep, they can be found throughout New York State, mostly in waterways. They're really a wetland animal, so they need a lot of water, especially low, shallow water, where they can find lots of plant material to hide in.
so we don't see them in the Adirondacks region, right?
Not as much around the
no.
Adirondacks,
Yeah, it's-
usually lower lying
Yep.
waterways.
All right. And they have another name. I was asking earlier because I couldn't remember what they're also called
The polka-dotted
polka
turtle.
dotted turtle.
Yep, if Mole will let me, you can actually look at his back here, and you'll see that he has a great many spots on his back. That's how he gets the name, either the spotted turtle or the polka-dotted turtle. Ooh, see if I can, there we are.
Yeah, very good. Now, when they're born, they don't have that many either, do they?
Great observation. Yeah, no, they do not. Actually, when they're first born, they might only have one per scoot. Looking at his shell here, you'll actually see that he has about 13 scoots all over his shell, and that's how his shell grows.
Well, let's tell people what the scoots are.
Absolutely. So these scoots are actually plates of his shell. The top part of his shell is called his carapace, and the carapace will grow over time by using these scoots to slowly push out and grow. So when he's first hatched, he might only have one spot per scoot, not very, very many. But as he continues to grow, he'll slowly develop many, many more spots to help with camouflage, to help him blend in with his environment.
Very cool.
When you say blend in, what kind of predators is he concerned about?
Oh, great question. Yeah, he actually needs to blend in from a great many things. A lot of things might try to take advantage of even a well-armored turtle. So anything like a river otter, some large animal, or some medium-sized animals like minks, sometimes predatory birds like owls or eagles, and occasionally even things like herons or cranes.
All right, because we think of them, they can pull in their shell, they're completely safe, but not from everything, not from the
Not
larger
from everything,
predators.
yep,
Yeah.
not from larger predators, and sometimes not from smarter predators.
If we were out walking about, will we be likely to come across one of these in New York?
Not terribly likely. It depends upon where you're walking. If you're out and about in one of our suburbs, maybe. If you're out into maybe a larger city, probably not. But if you go to any rural area, again with low-lying areas, especially around places that might be good for farmland, any wetland habitats especially, there could be a pretty good chance of running into these guys.
Now let's talk a little bit about his face. We were talking earlier. We can tell males from females by underneath the jaw there, right?
Absolutely.
In the eyes.
Yep. So if you look closely, you might be able to see that he's got a pretty distinct eye color. His eye color is a nice ruddy shade of brown. That's one of the ways that you might tell that he's a male or a boy turtle. Females will oftentimes have a more brightly colored iris, a nice orange colored eye. You can also look under his chin a little bit. Thanks for cooperating, buddy.
Yeah.
The males will usually have a bit of a darker chin pattern. Females will oftentimes have a much lighter chin, sometimes even a yellow or a pale color.
And you know what, Tim? This is an interesting question. Well, what's the difference between a turtle and tortoise? He's a turtle.
That's a really great
They're
question.
related, but they're not the same thing.
They
right?
are, yep. Yep, actually they're all kind of related in a group that we might call testudines. Testudines include turtles, tortoises, and sea turtles. Now he's not a tortoise because he is an aquatic fellow. If you look carefully at one of his limbs here, you might see that he has nicely webbed feet. And looking at his shell is nice and smooth on the top and kind of hydrodynamic, or can move through the water very easily. So he's well adapted to living in the water. He has a lot of different special body parts that help him to live in the water. A tortoise is much more adapted for the land.
How big do they get?
Well, it depends on the animal. He's actually just about full grown for a spotted turtle. The max they get is usually around 5.5 inches, but larger sea turtles can oftentimes get to be a few feet across.
And these guys live a long time if they don't meet one of those predators we talked about earlier, right?
Correct, yeah. If they don't encounter any problems in their environment, they can sometimes live to be over 25 years old,
Wow.
with some reports of spotted turtles living to be over 50.
Question. Here in New York, we get a lot of cold, particularly in upstate, and snow. How do they live in the winter?
That's a really good question. They actually will go through a thing that is very similar to hibernation. It's not true hibernation as we understand it, but they will lie low for a while. Their heart rate will slow, their blood temperature will cool with their environment, and they'll lie in an area with a lot of moisture around it. Usually the dens or holes made by minks or other burrowing mammals on the water's edge. It's a great place for them to hide low. Unfortunately, it does mean that sometimes an entire group of them who's hiding in a mink hole might suddenly become prey to a mink.
Yep.
What do they eat?
Oh, that's a great question. Looking at his face, you might see that he doesn't really have teeth. I don't know if he's opened his mouth for us yet, but he has a nice beak, and that beak is very sharp because he's both a carnivore and an herbivore. So he's an omnivore. He eats both plants and animals. He especially likes to eat very small animals like fish, insects, especially insect larvae, which there could be a lot in that shallow water in which he lives. But he also will eat any plant matter he can.
Right, and I know she had the gloves on, and that's protect him. But we always talk about what things are good pets, what aren't. But turtles, as well as most of the birds, we have to worry about salmonella, right?
Absolutely.
So-
Yep. Great observation. Yeah, I am wearing these gloves. It's mostly for my protection, but perhaps for him as well, in case I have anything that might make him unwell. And salmonella is a pretty big pathogen that can make a lot of people quite ill. So just to make sure that I'm not going to get it from him, I'll wear some nice gloves. If I have any cuts or scrapes on my hands, I would want to make sure that I'm not going to be touching a reptile or a bird directly. And then when I'm done handling him, even with the gloves, I'll make sure that I use some hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing him on.
Thanks,
Then thank you,
Tim.
Mole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Mo.
Yeah.
Want to know more about this animal and others like it? Go to our website, homeworkhotline.org, and click on the videos. Stay right there. We'll be back in a second.